How to choose your first economical electric car. An electric car has a large battery to store the energy it needs to make it go, a powerful electric motor to drive the front wheels or rear wheels, and an accelerator pedal that controls how fast you go, just like the accelerator pedal on your existing car. The gears are usually just forward, reverse, and park. Electric cars are just as waterproof as your petrol car, so don't worry about spray on wet roads. They are safer in a crash than petrol cars, less likely to catch fire than a petrol car. Electric cars have none of the complicated stuff that makes a petrol car expensive to run. No petrol engine, no gearbox, no fuel tank, no oil changes, no ignition system, no expensive annual services. And for an economical electric vehicle in the UK, no road tax to pay. Electric cars are much cheaper to run than the equivalent petrol or diesel version, and very much better for our health and for the planet. Without the petrol engine, the electric car is very much quieter. It can accelerate smoothly from standstill to 70 miles an hour, and a very ordinary electric car can accelerate faster than most sports cars. An electric car will often seem more spacious inside than a similar petrol car, as the electric motor takes up a lot less space than the petrol engine, and the batteries are usually fitted under the floor. Apart from that, an electric car is just like any other car. But car manufacturers are using the new design opportunities of electric cars to add bigger and better navigation features and new driving assist and safety features. Electric cars are most convenient when you can charge up the batteries at home with a garage or driveway to park your electric car while it's charging. Charge points for street parking will come, but they are not very common at the moment. If you have charge points at work, and there are enough charge points for everyone who wants to use them, that is another possibility. You can run your electric car using public charge points, but make sure that you choose a car that has a fast charge rate and you have good fast chargers close to where you live. That might work in Milton Keynes, but not on Dartmoor. You want to be able to do 90% of all return journeys from this home base. For the remaining 10% of journeys, you will need to allow the extra journey time for recharging from public fast charge points. But you will still be saving a lot of money on the cost of the journey compared with a petrol car. Work out the maximum return distance included in 90% of all journeys. For me, I do about 100 journeys a year that are there and back in the same day. They're up to a round trip of 200 miles or 320 kilometres. I also do about 8 longer trips in a year where I will be away from home for one night or more. So for me, 90% of all journeys are covered by a 200-mile range. It's important to note that we never use the maximum capacity of an electric car battery. A car with a maximum range of 200 miles or 320 kilometres wouldn't be enough for me. Whenever possible, we want to leave the top 20% of our battery capacity unused by only charging to 80%, not 100%. And whenever possible, we don't want to empty the battery below 20%. This will ensure that the battery will work efficiently for many years. To allow for this spare battery capacity, divide our round-trip distance by 0.6 to get the maximum range that the manufacturer would quote. So for me, 200 miles divided by 0.6 is equal to 333 miles, or 536 kilometres. This is the maximum range that I need to look for in an electric car. However, at the moment, the cars with the maximum economical range have about 280 miles. Since I wouldn't very often be doing a round trip of 200 miles, I could achieve that by very occasionally charging to 90% and getting back home with the battery still above 10%. A maximum quoted capacity of 280 miles gives an everyday usable range of 280 times 0.6, which is 168 miles. A maximum quoted capacity of 170 miles gives an everyday usable range of 170 times 0.6, which is 102 miles. We should aim to charge the car batteries after every day's use back up to 75% or 80% of its full capacity, so each day you set out with 80% of charge in the battery. Doing the same calculation for my wife's car, she commutes by car to work a round trip of less than 20 miles each day, and rarely uses it for any longer trips. So 20 miles divided by 0.6 equals 33 miles, or 53 kilometres of maximum range. If she does want a longer trip, then by planning ahead, she can always take our long-range car. We don't need two long-range cars. We want our car's batteries to last as long as possible. That means keeping the batteries at the right temperature, even in very hot or very cold weather and on long journeys. This requires active battery management that can both heat and cool the battery, backed up by sound guarantees and to supply it with a reputation to replace any battery that degrades too quickly or fails. Look for a guarantee that transfers to second or third owner. And while we're talking of very hot or very cold weather, a car that uses a heat pump for heating or cooling is a lot more efficient than one that uses resistance heating. Heated seats also cost less than heating the whole car, but you do need a thermostat to keep the seat at just the right temperature. Many electric cars can be paired with a mobile phone app that allows you to turn on the car heating and defrost the car from inside your home before you set out in the morning. There is a big advantage in buying the smallest electric car that meets your requirements. Larger and heavier vehicles need larger and more expensive batteries and take longer to charge and cost more to run. We measure the efficiency of an electric car in watt-hours per kilometre or per mile, or kilowatt-hours per 100 kilometres or miles, and then we can use the tariffs of our electricity supplier to calculate the cost per kilometre or mile, or the cost per 100 kilometres or miles. The fuel consumption of an electric car is very much determined by how you drive it, just like a petrol car. Drive it slowly, steadily, smoothly, and you get the best efficiency. Drive it at high speed on the motorway, and the efficiency goes down. Drive it aggressively with a lot of fast acceleration and then braking, and the efficiency goes down. Load the car up with 5 adults and their luggage and drive it at the maximum motorway speed into a headwind, and you may not get the range you were expecting. There is now a worldwide standard for testing and comparing cars known as the WLTP, the Worldwide Harmonized Light Vehicles Test Procedure. Check that the figures you are looking at are not for the older NEDC tests, which suggested longer ranges than were possible in realistic driving. WLTP figures may be provided for city driving and for a combined test of city and motorway speeds. These are very useful as a way of comparing different vehicles, but as I said earlier, how you drive may produce very different results. There is also the possibility that larger electric cars will be taxed more in the future. And also remember that the switch to electric cars is also to protect our planet and civilization from the effects of global warming. A smaller vehicle makes a lot more sense. It can charge faster and cost less to run. Another thing to check is the insurance group of your electric car. The higher numbers for insurance groups can be a lot more expensive to insure. Now, charging at home. Charging at home is the most convenient and also the cheapest way of filling your car batteries with energy ready for the next trip. You can charge on an ordinary 3-pin plug, but this is not very fast and not the safest method of charging your car. Most electric cars do provide a charging lead with a 3-pin plug for occasional use. It is much better to invest in having a proper 7 kilowatt charger unit installed close to where you park your car in your garage or on an outside house wall, especially while there is a government-backed OLEV grant of up to £500 towards the cost of installing the charging unit, also known as the Electric Vehicle Home Charge Scheme. Many electric cars can charge at a maximum of 7 kilowatts using a home charge unit, but this is quite sufficient to charge overnight. Do note that not all charger units are the same. You don't want to find you have an electric car without a built-in charge time controller, as well as a wall unit without a built-in charge time controller. But from 2019 onwards, your EV charge point vehicle and installer must be OLEV approved and the charge point must be smart. When you have a confirmed delivery date for your new electric car, you can order installation and qualify for the grant. Your installer will sort out the grant details and provide the forms. The best electrical supply tariffs for charging your car need a smart controller, either in your car or in the wall charge unit, so that you can set up your charging schedule and get the best rates for charging from your chosen electricity supplier. The OMI is an example of a smart wall charger with an app. To keep installation costs down, the charger on the wall needs to be not too far from your electrical meters, with easy access for the installer to position the cables. The car charging cables on your wall unit need to have plugs that match the charging socket of your car. Again, your installer will check your car details. The charger unit on the wall can be mounted outside and is waterproof, but it's still a good idea to have a cover that keeps unit and cables dry. Now for those 10% of longer trips where you may need to use a public charger en route or at your destination. Make a point of charging your electric car's batteries to the maximum 100% before setting out, instead of your normal 80% maximum. If the weather is cold, preheat the car while it's still plugged into the charge unit at home. Wear warm clothing and heat the seat rather than the car. A heat pump heating system is better in cold climates as it uses less energy. On long journeys, drive gently, keep the speed down to maximize the range of the electric car, which isn't something you have to worry about too much for your normal 90% of driving. You can see where public chargers are located on ZapMap from your desktop browser or from a mobile app. Use the filters to display only the fast chargers that your car can use. You can also use ZapMap to plan your route. Plan to recharge when the battery gets down to about 20% of charge, unless you know you can get to your destination and there is a charger at your destination before the battery gets down to 10% of charge. Do beware that some public chargers are only accessible during working hours. Your electric car needs to have a charge rate that takes advantage of the fastest public chargers available. You don't want to be planning a long journey and take longer than half an hour to add 100 miles of charge. That's 160 kilometers. This means using at the minimum a rapid 50 kilowatt public charger and preferably being able to use 100 kilowatt or 150 kilowatt chargers. The charge time on these fast chargers that interests us is going from 20% of charge to 80% of charge. For a new Kia electric car, charging from 20% up to 80% on a 50 kilowatt fast charger should take about an hour and add 150 miles. And on a 100 kilowatt charger, about half an hour to add 150 miles. However, the charge rate on a 50 kilowatt charger is usually somewhat less than 50 kilowatts. I'm going to plan 2 example journeys. The first going from Torquay to Birmingham and back. Now, Torquay to Birmingham is 180 miles. So, starting from 100% of charge with a range of over 200 miles, I plan to charge once as close to my destination as possible. ZapMap shows 2 50 kilowatt chargers at the welcome break services. Some public chargers allow you to pay with a credit card, but not all. Some require you to set up a special card for the public charge point company before you travel, and some may require you to use a mobile phone app as well, so some homework is needed before you travel long distance.
If I charge there up to 80%, I can start my journey back with 80% of charge. But this is only a range of 175 miles before the battery would be down to 10%. I would have to keep an eye on consumption and have a short stop halfway through the journey back, perhaps at Bristol for half an hour. Alternatively, at Birmingham I could top up to 80% at the welcome break services first, and then at my destination charge with a 3-pin plug overnight to take it up to 100%. That would allow the return trip without needing to stop. The second example journey is from Torquay to Milton Keynes. The fastest route is via the motorway network, but is greater than 225 miles. However, a more direct route via Gloucester and the Cotswolds is 200 miles. I would need to drive gently, but probably wouldn't need to charge. However, on this route I usually stop for a break at Gloucester services, so would charge up just while I have a break. At Milton Keynes there are plenty of 50 kilowatt fast chargers, but some hotels and guest houses have now installed 7 kilowatt charge points for their customers. So if they will let me have a charge point for an overnight charge, I will also be able to start the return trip with 100% charge and not need to stop to charge en route. I have noted on previous trips that with the prevailing westerly winds, fuel consumption on the return trip into the wind can be higher than the outgoing trip with the wind behind. I will always keep an eye on the consumption at about the 20% level, so that I have a choice of chargers I could use if I need to. If one is fully occupied, I can always go on to the next. Hopefully the government will soon legislate that all chargers must accept payment by credit card and without imposing cost penalties.
If you're buying your electric car outright, depreciation of the value of your car is perhaps the biggest cost of running the electric car, and for some cars that are in demand, the depreciation can be zero. Depreciation is highest for those electric cars with insufficient range and a lack of good battery management. But even for those vehicles, there's a good market for second-hand cars for people who only need one for a short daily commute, like my wife, and won't be using them for a longer journey. There are many other advantages that are common to most electric cars, such as the very low cost of electricity compared to fossil fuels, the low cost of maintenance, superb acceleration, and a smooth and quiet ride. And don't forget the lack of pollution. Welcome to the future.
Do subscribe to my channel if you want to keep up to date with more news and views.